I'm going to look all of this up. One other thing, I'm just going off certain notes and elements of what we've been doing over the last 3 days, but this just came up a few minutes ago.
We hate to do this, really, but the president isn't telling the truth. These allegations against Joe Biden and Hunter Biden that he's repeating have been investigated by the Ukrainians, none other than the Wall Street Journal included in their report on Friday that the Ukrainians view this issue as having been investigated and adjudicated. And what's amazing is that what Trump appears to be trying to do is to turn his own impeachment into a big deflection.
Yeah, he's trying to change the story. I think we should say two things. First of all, the question on the table here is not about Joe Biden. It's not about Chris Murphy or any other senators he's talking about. It's not about the whistleblower. It's about his conduct and whether his conduct as president is impeachable or not, whether it amounts to misconduct. But as it relates to Joe Biden, it's important to note that this story has been looked at and thoroughly debunked by everyone involved. Joe Biden's son served on the board of a Ukrainian company. That Ukrainian company was investigated by the Ukrainian Attorney General. That investigation was closed before Joe Biden ever asked for the Attorney General to be fired. And the reason Joe Biden asked for the Attorney General to be fired, he wasn't speaking on behalf of himself or his son. He wasn't even speaking on behalf of the Obama administration. He was speaking on behalf of the West at large. The IMF wanted him gone. The other Western governments wanted him gone because this Attorney General was known to be corrupt. That's why Joe Biden pushed for him to be outed. It had nothing to do with his son, and everyone that's looked at it has confirmed that.
I mean, it only took 12,000 lies, 3 years, and 2 brazen attempts to conspire with a foreign power to interfere in our elections before the media finally learned how to deal with Trump. And that is, instead of letting him gaslight those watching completely unchecked, instead of letting him spread misinformation and malign innocent people to deflect attention away from himself, Nicolle Wallace instead opted to use her platform to fact-check the president in real time. And this is important because of the media's role here is not to simply serve as an open platform for the president's barrage of lies, it's to make sure that we know the facts, which Trump is incapable of acknowledging. This administration relies on this toothpaste out of the tube approach, wherein Trump will spew as many lies as he can, knowing that once he said it, the damage is already done. He did that when he lied about Obama not being born in America, when he said millions of undocumented immigrants voted in 2016. Because despite the fact that journalists came out after the fact and disproved his absurd claims, those listening at the time believed him. And so it's the responsibility of those very networks that are transmitting his words to millions of people to make sure that they're given context. And if that means that at the very second he tells a lie, an anchor needs to cut in, then so be it. Because the fact is, when it comes to this latest scandal, too much is at stake. What we're seeing is a dangerous disinformation campaign coming out of the White House, in which Trump is trying to justify his own glaring acts of criminality to peddle an outright lie that Joe Biden is involved in some corruption scandal. Trump has just basically been caught leveraging taxpayer-funded military aid to a foreign country on them opening an investigation into his top political opponent for the express purpose of interfering in our election. He's holding our tax dollars hostage, holding the people of Ukraine looking to defend themselves from Russia hostage, all so he can have talking points against the Democrats heading into 2020. But what's worse is that it was proof that he'd have never stopped. He'd already essentially gotten away with it once. We knew that his campaign cooperated with Russian officials working to help him win in 2016. We knew that he obstructed justice on 10 separate occasions, and yet still could manage to mobilize support for impeachment, despite more crimes, more guilty pleas, more indictments from those surround him than any other president in history. And so to have a 2-year investigation show so many examples of criminality, and yet still he proceeded to commit a nearly identical crime before the dust even settled on the first one, was proof that he was willing to go to any lengths to abuse his power. So Republicans might watch Nicolle Wallace and say that she's just being partisan, but the fact is that she's doing her job. Her role isn't to give a microphone to someone spewing lies, it's to make sure we know the truth. And by the way, calling her partisan would be especially misguided considering she's not even a Democrat. She was the White House communications director for George W. Bush and was senior advisor for John McCain's 2008 presidential campaign. She just isn't so driven by blind loyalty to the Republican Party that she isn't able to see what's painfully obvious. That Trump was basically pressure testing our political system to see just how far he could push it, and it blew up in his face. Other networks should follow her lead because whether it's his rallies or his press conferences or even his Twitter feed, Trump knows that he's been able to game the system. But given the danger it's put us in, it's time that everyone else's strategy finally changes.